Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and it's my absolute pleasure and privilege to be sitting in for Kevin Graham this afternoon alongside Patrick, Paddy and John. Hopefully you go easy on me, guys. On a Wednesday, there will be no mention of kind of late 80s ponytailed Scottish pop groups, Paddy.
You were lucky, matey.
No, I was driving home from Glasgow when all that kicked off, and it was hilarious. So thank you very much for that.
Last week, man, when he was talking about it, and do you know when I twigged the looks I was getting when I was talking about it, I was looking at the two guys and they're going, "This looks a bit weird." And then when the young man started talking about what he would do, I was like, "Oh man, I've totally misread this." It was an absolute belter. Aye. So I think I was stitched up.
I think so as well, to be honest with you. I mean, JP and I get a bit of stick for talking music on a Thursday, but when it comes to Celtic and music, they're intrinsically linked. And just about a week ago, Snoop Dogg was over, and it was brilliant to see him in the hoops as well. I've actually been a fan since the early 90s, and for some reason, he's just taken a shine to Celtic. There's been a few different examples of that, and I think it's absolutely superb. There's loads to talk about, so I'm delighted to be sitting in for Kev Graham. I'm sorry it's not going to be as poetic as it normally is, or analogy strewn as it normally is on a Wednesday, but we will go through all things Celtic. And John has ran two very interesting polls on social media that we'll be discussing as well. But one thing I need to throw out there, because it was a staple part of Acsom for a long, long time, Kevin and I developed a kind of sideshow called Screamer Celica. And I can announce that Kevin will be back tonight with myself for a special, and tomorrow night as well. We're going to do two on the bounce on the back of Noel Gallagher's recent interview and Liam's response that Oasis could well be reforming. We're going to do a couple of Oasis specials tonight and tomorrow. So tune in at 7 o'clock on the channel, where Kevin and I will be back with Screamer Celica. John, I want to start off with one of your votes. I love a wee bit of the old work research and all that kind of stuff prior to a bulletin, and you've been doing a wee bit of that. Tell us about the first poll that you ran.
Well, there was a couple of good questions laid out there by some people that follow me on Twitter. And one of them did try and run the polls themselves, but we're only getting like 100 responses and stuff like that. Obviously, I've got a much bigger reach, so I really wanted a much bigger sample. So the one I did first got 1,400 votes, and it is, who is the most naturally gifted current Celtic player? Not the best player, but the one who could rock up anywhere with minimal prep and make you think, wow. So I can only fit 4 in, so I couldn't get like Ike's and Kalmack in. So you're only allowed 4. And the 4 I put in were Haksabanovic, Jota, Hatate, and Kyogo. So that's Haksabanovic, Jota, Hatate, and Kyogo. Which one of those could you not extract a beach ball from in a phone box? You know, so that's what we're looking for. Who is the most naturally gifted? And I'll just say there was a very clear winner in this one.
Right. I've not looked at the result, John. I seen you were running the poll, so we'll throw this out to the guys and also to the listeners as well. I'll start with Patrick. Patrick McGilp, what's your take on that? Is it Haksabanovic, Jota, Hatate, or Kyogo? I mean, we're spoiled for naturally talented footballers, but yeah, those 4 are incredible.
I was just about to say it's an incredibly difficult choice. I mean, any of them could win that, but I feel like I'm naturally drawn towards the skill of Jota, and obviously Haksabanovic would be a close second for that particular attribute. But just the skill and the trickery and his crossing's superb. His finishing's not bad at all either. His dribbling, his passing's quite good. So in terms of a sort of all-round winger, I would say naturally gifted, I would have to go with Jota. But obviously, the other 3 that you consider, the finishing and the touches and the acceleration over a short distance from Kyogo, and then Haksabanovic, very similar to Jota, and then Hatate. I think the reason I'm not going for Hatate is because he's came on leaps and bounds, in my opinion, since he first joined. I mean, he was brilliant when he first came in, but I think he's went up like a few gears since we first got him just over a year ago. So for that reason, I would go with Jota.
Jota, says Patrick. Paddy, what about yourself?
Could be any one of the 4, couldn't it? I've got Hatate. And I think for what we've seen for Hatate so far, now bearing in mind Hatate's only playing professional football for us. I think this is his third season. The skill that guy has got, his passing ability, his vision, his touch, he can certainly rifle in a few as well. His versatility is one of the biggest things. I remember reading about Hatate when he first signed for Celtic. He was mooted as I'm pretty sure he was mooted as a left back, but he had played left back, centre mid, attacking mid. He'd even been playing as a striker as well, I think, the season before he came to Celtic. I might be wrong on that. I'm sure somebody in the comments might correct me, but I'm positive before he signed for Celtic, he played mostly as a striker, and his work rate's phenomenal. I mean, when you look at what he did in the Champions League this season for the limited time he's been a professional footballer, he showed that he could mix it with the best, especially when he played against Real Madrid. So for me, I'm not saying it has to be Hatate, but out of those four, I love Jota. Jota is one of the most exciting players I've seen, but naturally gifted, it's got to be Hatate for me.
Right. I mean, I think you could probably have an argument for all four of them, John. But
there was, in fact, one thing, Paul. I did have one person pointing out to me that naturally gifted, even as a broad term, and he started quoting back to me people who were naturally gifted, brilliant passers, and naturally gifted, and I was like, come on. You know, I can't run a poll just for the guy that passes well, or all the rest of it. But it is quite broad. But for me, when I think about it, I'm thinking about Jinky, likes of Paddy McCourt, someone like that. It's a Lubo, someone that makes you go wow,
Yeah, I definitely. Danielle has come in to say Haksabanovic a dark horse. I'd agree with that. That Ross County game, him and Hatate got us the win against the low block. I think. Yeah, there's more to come from Haksabanovic, which is maybe the reason I haven't or I wouldn't vote for him. Jota is one of the ones, he's a go-to. The Jinx, I've actually said over the last few weeks, a lot of it has been more substance and style from Jota, which has actually worked pretty well. And Kyogo, one of the guys that you could easily underappreciate because the ability is incredible. But I think a big part of that's his movement as well. I'm going to go for Hatate. And I think that when you see people doing all the wee clips and the compilations, sometimes live when you're watching it, you miss a lot that he does. And some of it is the close ball control. Sometimes the body movement, he just goes one way with the shoulders and he's gone. His turning is unbelievable. I'm going to go for Hatate, John. So give us your take on it and also the result of the poll.
Well, when I saw it, I thought what I actually said was, that's a fascinating question. And it actually deserves some contemplation. So my immediate response was Haksabanovic because I love him, right? That's just pure bias, right? But then within a few minutes, I was thinking, I've just completely contradicted myself there, because on this pod, the last time I was on, I said, if you had to distill Hatate's best moments onto a YouTube video, people would think they were signing a £50 million player. His best moments are spectacular. And that seems to be the general opinion of the people that voted. It went Kyogo 5%, Haksabanovic 13%, Jota 33%, Hatate 49%. So it was quite a clear win, and it's interesting. It wasn't my instinctive reaction at all, because I was more thinking about that really, really special close quarters, all the rest of it. But then you remember back to, first of all, everyone makes the point that Hatate's only been playing a few years, but you remember back to some of his footwork just before goals and shots and stuff like that, the switching from foot to foot, just instantly. Dragging the ball back. He's done some sensational stuff. So I agree with the people that voted in the poll, I think honestly that's a fair result.
Yeah, it's an incredible array of talent, John, and I look forward to looking at your second poll as well that will break up the chat. Throughout the next 40-50 minutes now. Urban Culture, good day to all Acsom addicts and a good day to you and all the usual commenters and anybody else who's coming in for the first time as well. Jungle Lion, there's a reason Ange and his players, let's start off with this topic then, are on a daily basis being touted to leave every day They're bloody good at what they're doing. And that takes us to the tagline, why transfer speculation won't affect Ange's treble charge. Who we had this week, lads? Has it been Starfelt and Abada leaving the club? It seems to be a new player every week. But what John Gillian says, Paddy, I'm talking to yourself, Paddy, Paddy Sinnott, it's true. We're always going to have this interest, but there does seem to be this this necessity of the media and the Scottish press in particular to try and whip up some kind of unsettling story, in particular coming up to a big game. Obviously, we'll have got a big game in a couple of weeks. When you see the speculation, it's just part of the course, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think most of the problem we've got the next couple of weeks is this international break in it, and this is what the media do during the international break. There's not much happening in club football, so they'll drum up some form of story to, I don't know, to get their clicks and to try and generate some interest. But I always seems to be around about this time where we get players that are linked to God knows who and God knows where. The thing that annoys me most about it is maybe not so much your players, but the chat about Ange. I mean, they link him to every single job it's going, and you can, and you know, as soon as a job comes up, he's going to be the first name that's going to be flung in there. Even jobs that he's not suited for, like for example, Spurs is probably a side that Ange is suited for. That they are top level or top of the league table. No threat of relegation. We spoke about this a few weeks ago, John, if you remember. I think it was before the young man came on a Wednesday. He's not going to go to a club like Brighton. He's not going to go to Southampton. He's not going to go to Crystal Palace, all these kind of clubs that can't afford to play the Ange ball, if you want to call it that. It's just.
By the way, sorry, Roy Hodgson. Roy Hodgson, we just appointed Roy Hodgson. I mean, talk about managerial merry-go-round. He's too old for a merry-go-round. He'd break his hip. You know what I mean? That's absolute. What an appointment that is. That's a shocker.
Yeah. I mean, what age is he, John? He's in his 70s, yeah?
He's in his 70s, aye. Well in his 70s. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, seriously, I think he's knocking on 80, but, you know, honestly, I mean, it's just the lack of imagination, you know, is just shocking. You know, is it any wonder Ange gets touted? Sorry, Paddy, but is it any wonder Ange gets touted? Because, I mean, if they're going back to guys who were at their peak about 40 years ago, you know, is it any wonder, you know, that Ange has been touted as the next exciting new up-and-coming manager? I mean, it's just, it really is.
Even though he's 60.
Sam Allardyce will get dug up at some point as well. You know what I mean? They'll parade him out at some point. You know,
I've never forgiven Hodgson, John, for Neuchâtel Xamax. I've never forgiven him for that. Liverpool fans have probably never forgiven him for Danny Wilson. Remember that signing as well. But I think you're right, Paddy. You know, even when he's not suited to the job, i.e. Spurs, they're going to link him to it anyway. And then you look at it, there's no real source quotes, there's no real basis to the or fibre to the story. It's just there's a job available, chuck Angie's hat in.
That, but there's no real analysis to it either. Why do people not look at it and go, right, when we link Ange to this job, what are we going to do to kind of try and make this story credible? At least it's just a headline. A job's free. Ange could or would or may, or the club are looking at him. It's all absolute nonsense. There's no substance to what they write about. They just write for the headlines, write for the clicks. But when you actually look at the brass tacks yet, 90% of the jobs that Ange has been linked to, he's just not the manager for their jobs.
And the thing is as well, Paddy, he's come out and spoke about it. He's come out and, you know, he can't make it any more clear what his intentions are, his vision, his plan. He's already come out, and it's just going to get tedious for him, as tedious as it is for us, to the point where he just won't, for me, he won't even humour a response. Patrick, I'm going to come to yourself in relation to a couple of the players, obviously, who have been in the headlines in Starfelt and Abada. And, you know, there are some players who come to the end of their cycle. I think maybe we were a wee bit surprised that cycle only lasted 18 months for Juranovic and Giakoumakis, but we very quickly came to terms with that. And do you think that's down to the way that Ange has basically communicated to us about this aggressive recruitment strategy that he has, not just recruitment, but obviously selling players also?
Yeah, and just, you know, being totally organised, and more organised than I've ever seen Celtic, having guys in the door before the window even opens, having guys in the door before whoever they're replacing leaves. I mean, Kyogo came in before Edward left. You know, Johnston and O came in before Yakimakis and Jovanovic left. It's all about forward planning, and I think Ange said, I think it was during the January transfer window, or maybe even before it, that they were preparing for the summer because the groundwork for January had been done, and all they sort of needed to do was actually have the window open and sign the players. So to have a guy like that in the club, it's a very comforting feeling. I think we spoke about Abada and Starfield last week actually, because I think maybe not Starfield, but I think I said Abada was maybe one that I wouldn't mind if we were to sell someone to see him go. It's just because I think you had Newcastle was the link back
Yeah.
in the summer. They
Mhm.
were linked for maybe 10, 12 million or something. And you think to yourself, well, this is a guy that he comes off the bench more than he starts. He gets the goals, no doubt about it. He loves a goal in a derby as well. But if he's not playing and someone's offering you that kind of money, the situation Celtic find themselves in, you've got to consider offers like that. No doubt that we can improve with that sort of money if Ange is able to reinvest that. I'm sure we've got. I mean, we seem to have eyes on every market all over the world nowadays. So I'm sure we'll be able to find a winger who's more than capable of replacing him. Starfield, I think the link. I think that's just people putting two and two together. The guy I think is 28.
Mm.
For a defender, it's not that old, but for as a footballer, if you're looking to get value out of a guy, you probably need to sell him. That's the last chance you're going to get. Um, so I'm not sure there's anything in that. I've seen people in the comments say that Starfield himself has denied it. There's nothing in it at all. Obviously, the Abada one, you've had fuel added to the fire with the chairman of the Israeli club coming out saying there's a 90% chance he's going to leave. And if Abada does want to leave, then Ange will find a club that he can sell him to because he only wants people who want to be here, who have the
Mhm.
right attitude. So
Mhm.
it'll be interesting. I think we'll probably see one or two players go out the door, but it's the nature of the beast, if you will. We are successful just now. We're absolutely rampant. I think we've won something like 14 games in a row in all competitions. We've not lost in the league since September. We've only dropped 5 points all season. So you're going to have players and managers linked away. And it's not something that concerns me as long as Ange's at the helm. I've got full confidence that we'll keep on improving.
Yeah, there was a comment came through yesterday, John, saying that one of the audience still wasn't over Kenny Dalglish leaving in 1977. But what Ange is trying to get us to the point of is that we understand people are going to move away from the club. The only constant at any football club is the supporters. The players come and go, the management team, the board, the supporters are always there. But it's always hard when you lose a player who maybe has become a bit of a fan's favourite, John. I think looking at the two players, Paddy makes a good point, Patrick rather makes a good point in relation to Starfelt. The previous two who left were probably in that same age bracket.
Mhm.
So if it was to happen, in terms of the timing, etc., you would maybe not be surprised. Abada's a wee bit different. I don't actually think, even though we do have good players in that position, it would leave us short on the right-hand side if he was to leave. But I would have full confidence, John, that Ange does have somebody lined up if that happens.
Just at one point first, something that annoys me. If you're old enough to remember when there was only a few channels on the telly and you'd be in the middle of watching some iconic movie on ITV and they'd interrupt it for news at 10 and they say, come back and watch The Godfather again, part 2 at 10:30 or 10:40 after all your news. The news at 10, the international break is the news at 10 of the football season. I hate it. It's annoying and it just really interrupts something that's going well. So anyway, get that gripe off my chest. In terms of Abada and all, I mean, the fact is this, we're going to be running this transfer policy now, which means there's always going to be speculation because there are people going to be leaving. We need to keep the core of the team, it used to be the case where we would have to sell their best player every year. If we can avoid selling our best player every year by selling someone on the periphery for a pile of money to an English team, happy days, suits us down to the ground. That said, we are going to have to get used to speculation, especially when the Abada one in particular is following the same pattern as the two before. So if that's an established pattern, there's definitely going to be speculation, and it's not so much. It's not really speculation. It is a pattern now. There's proof of what's going to happen here. But the thing about Abada is he is young. He has a long time left on his contract. He has very, very impressive stats, and we should be looking to get a lot of money for him. How big a miss is he going to be for the team? He was the second top scorer last year. I think he's the second top scorer this year. You're going to miss those goals. Obviously, taking that number of goals out of team, is problematic. You would have to go back and look at how many of those were crucial goals, clutch goals that won you a game, or whether it was just padding on top of a 4-1 or a 3-1 or whatever it might be. But he's a very talented player. He's a very talented finisher. But I mean, as Patrick was saying, he's got a lot of development to do. He doesn't really beat a man. He hasn't got a trick. He's pacey, but he's not super fast. And for all the pluses, you can see quite clear minuses. Now, if you're a team in the bottom of the English Premiership, though, all you might be looking at is those goals, just that goal return.
Yeah.
And that might be the only thing that matters to you. He doesn't need to beat a man. Maybe you only play on the counter-attack. That'll suit him down to the ground. He's an instinctive finisher, so the more time he has to think about it, the worse he is. So, there's lots there. But at the end of the day, I mean, the last game he came on that I can remember, now I admit freely my memory sucks, but the last game I remember him starting where he impressed was the Rangers game, where he embarrassed Barisic, which was a fabulous game, which I'll always be grateful to him for. I really enjoyed that one. But I don't really remember too many, when he started and you were thinking, oh, don't hook him at 60 minutes, Ange, please don't. He just, he has had plenty of opportunities. He has been a wonderful impact sub for us. He's not been a great starter. You cannot carry on your career like that when people are offering you silly money. He's not going to. We don't care as long as we're moving forward, right? So, back in the day, we'd have taken the 10 million from him, say, bought his replacement for 50 pence, put the other 9.5 million in a biscuit tin, whatever it is. I don't know what happened to the other £495,999.50 there, but anyway.
You pocket it as an agent's fee, aye?
But yeah, no, obviously that's why I'm not doing the accounts at the club. But essentially, as long as the money is invested in a sensible way back into the team and we are progressing, because we're not looking for a guy that is an impact sub. We're looking for a guy to challenge Jota for being the best winger at the club.
Yeah,
we're looking for a guy who can offer a complete performance from the start of the game. We're looking for a guy who can stand up in Europe and say, I'm a danger for the whole 90 and beyond. Not a guy that comes on to kill off an already dying dog at 60 minutes. So and I'm not trying to be harsh on the guy at all. I think he's a fantastic player, but look, we are going to be moving on. He's not the only one that will be going either. So as long as there's a point to it, there's no point in selling guys on, not reinvesting, ending up back where you started. You know what I mean? So if the club isn't getting our goals, if we're not getting better in Europe, if that's what's happening, if there's no actual definitive outcome which is positive, then it's all just a waste of time. It's just musical chairs for the sake of it. So we need to be progressing, and as long as we're progressing, I think everyone's going to be happy. Doesn't matter who's in and out.
Sorry, Paddy, you were making a point there.
No, I was just going to say the problem that he's got now is he's getting, I don't know if the reputation's the right word, but he's getting that way. He's coming on as a so-called super sub now, isn't he? Because he had his chance a couple of weeks ago when he did well against St Mirren. He got his chance to start against Hearts, and I think it was Hearts, and he was fairly anonymous in the game. So he has, like John was saying, he's getting that way where he's getting brought on 60 minutes to go, and the game is more or less already done. So there's no that pressure on him to kind of perform, if that's the right way to kind of explain it. Whereas the pressure to perform is from the very beginning, from the starting lineup, where you need to go out and you need to just take teams apart straight away. He's not really had that pressure for a while now. So I think that's a problem that could become a problem for Abada, as being known as one of the people who just come off the bench to be a super sub, I suppose.
The other thing as well, and I'm going to bring some of the comments up, very interesting comments coming through in relation to this, but players come to Celtic, and I just have to go to the some of the comments that Mika Lustig's made over the last few weeks, where he talks about the best time in his career, the best dressing room in his career, the most enjoyable sessions and teammates, because success brings that, and they come to Celtic, and it's almost like, I'm not going to say they take it for granted, but if you leave Celtic and you go down to many clubs down south, most clubs down south, are you going to replicate that anywhere? Are you going to get, you're going to get the riches, you're going to get the wages, you're playing in what is described as a bigger and better and glitzier league, but are you going to have that satisfaction that you've maybe had at Celtic? Look at some of the players who have gone down south and not really kicked on. Edward's the one that really is in the forefront of my mind at the moment, where he's gone down there as a really special talent. I mean, let's not forget, I know people will bring up his final season. There was comments yesterday saying that he downed tools. Again, as John said before, if you looked at his stats, I don't think anybody could say down tools. That was more to do with his kind of like his approach, his demeanour, the body language, because we all became body language experts during the pandemic, looking at John Kennedy and Neil Lennon's relationship on the sidelines and then coming up with a solution to that one. But you go down there and it's not as easy as a lot of them think, Patrick. So, I mean, if you look at the trajectory of Leo Bada's career, it's been swift. He was an international player before he signs for Celtic. I think he scored the first competitive goal under Ange Postecoglou for Celtic, and his stats last season and this season have been nothing short of phenomenal. I keep saying, if it was a 19-year-old kid coming through the ranks, he would be a wonder kid. And, you sometimes take that for granted. If he's to move away just now after 2 years, the timing might not be right for him. He might not be ready for that move, but there always seems to be that insistence with these players to get the deal done and get away from Celtic. Sometimes it can be too quick for them, though. And I fear maybe maybe it is a wee bit too quick. He's got a contract at Celtic that should keep him here for another few years. I reckon another year would aid his development. If he's keen to go, though, he'll go. But there's no guarantee that the grass is greener down in the English Premiership, is there?
Yeah, it would really, really surprise me if he's the one pushing for this. Obviously, I mean, you've got the money and you've got the TV and you've got the better quality teams, no doubt about it. But he's obviously developed as a player since he came here. He's obviously working under a great coach. He's obviously playing for a great club. He's got a very good chance of winning trophies every season. There's a 95% plus chance he'll be playing in the Champions League next year. It's an attractive proposition that not many clubs can offer. I mean, you're probably looking at clubs like, Benfica, Porto, Ajax are the only other clubs that can offer both Champions League football and guaranteed success of a similar level to Celtic that maybe Abada could play for. You mentioned Edward there. I mean, the only player I can think of who's left Celtic, went down south and absolutely knocked it out the park is Van Dijk. Everyone else, they've had good seasons. They've been good players, played for good teams. You think of guys like Victor Wanyama. Aya is playing for a good team. I think Brentford are ninth or something just now. He's having a good career. But when you look at guys like maybe Gary Hooper, who wanted to play for England, and obviously if you want to play for England, you probably do need to go down south. But you're relying on 1 or 2 chances a game at Norwich, and that's if you get picked. And you're looking at guys like Abada. Abada might have, I think he's got 11 goals this season and 15 last season. But he's getting a hell of a lot of chances at Celtic because we create a lot of chances, and it's just the nature of the game. Whereas if you're playing for, I mean, if it's any sort of lower league English Premier League team, you're not going to get as many chances, and that's just the fact. If he's playing for someone like Leeds, Southampton, if they're buying him on the expectation of scoring goals, he's going to have to become a lot more clinical. And I don't know. I think you've got to remember the guy's only 21, so maybe he's sort of taken in by the glitz and the glamour of moving to a top 5 league. You would like to think he's got people in his corner who are sensible and could sort of have these conversations with him. But if his attitude isn't there, if he does want to leave, then he's going to definitely get his wish, because we don't keep people like that at the club anymore.
No, absolutely. And some of these comments feed into that as well. Joe Hamilton, Ange's state of mind is strong, clear, and completely ruthless. We have nothing to worry about. Hail, hail, troops. And it's good to hear from you, Joe Hamilton, on the YouTube channel. We've also got Noah McKee. Good afternoon. Hail, hail, and let's go. Definitely. I think we were on time today, which is always a bonus. Afternoony, folks, says Martin Kay. And we've got Keith Oakton all the way from Plymouth, as always. Ross Conley. Afternoon all. Hope you're all well. Up the good, guys. And Danielle is already bored of this international break. Now, by the way, John, that also feeds into this. You know, that they've got to fill those column inches. So a wee speculative story, throw it out there, a bit of clickbait, and keep that revenue running. That has to be considered. A lot of these stories might not have much of a basis.
It feeds in more than one way, right? Because if you're under that sort of pressure, which you are in any job, you've got to deliver X number of columns, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. Easiest, laziest thing to do, the fastest thing to do. Everyone reverts to that. But that comes back to work environment, right? So when you're talking about, going down south, or going anywhere else really, that's not Celtic, I think with experience as you get older, and I think I can speak with expertise here. As you get older, you realise that it's far, far more important that you're happy than it is anything else. From my experience, I started work for myself 20 odd years ago. Could have made a lot more if I'd stayed doing what I was doing. Yeah, I'm a lot happier that I didn't. Absolutely. Now, however, there are factors of, when you're talking about the money that they're offering down there, it's not a factor of 2 or 3, it's a factor of 10 or 20. So then you really, are you prepared to sacrifice your happiness for the money? But it's very, very difficult to get motivated in a place where you're not happy, where you're not feeling it, and it is a big difference. I always remember Dad talking about moving to Crystal Palace, and he just couldn't get over how amateur it was compared to Celtic, and how the attitudes of the players compared to Celtic players. Guys letting guys go unmarked because it wasn't my man, and losing goals and stuff because of that. And it infuriated them. Absolutely infuriated him, coming from a Celtic team, all of whom were just killers, basically, attitude-wise, and to get down there and this guy's, half-arsing it, and he just couldn't tolerate it. And if you come from an environment like Celtic as it is now, where you're winning all the time, where the standards are high, where there's that real enthusiasm and expectation in the camp, for Ange is an inspirational manager, and you are then moving to, whoever it is, Brentford. I don't know any of the English clubs anymore in terms of who their managers are. You're going down there, trying to eke out a win, every now and again. The manager maybe likes you, maybe he doesn't. You're playing a different way. It's all about trying to be solid, give nothing up. Just playing a different kind of football that doesn't, as a football player, you don't really want to be playing unless you're a centre half, so I accept that the money, like, you talk about Kieran Tierney and stuff like that, I accept that the level of the money is ridiculous, but, ask him now how happy he is.
Brilliant point. Absolutely. Yeah. I remember, John, I spoke to Willie Wallace about that move because he went down to Palace with your dad as well. Yeah. And there was an ex-Celtic Crystal Palace called Tony Taylor at the time, and he had been at Celtic, obviously, with Willie Wallace and John Hughes previously, and they had that discussion during training. It was a training drill where nobody was putting in the effort, and the goalie was putting the effort in, and Tony Taylor turns round to Willie Wallace and John and says, big joke, wouldn't allow this to happen, and the standard just dropped instantly. So you're going to a big club in London and they're saying this wouldn't happen at Celtic. The standards were completely different. I always remember back to Samaras saying it was about the medals for him, which was brilliant. And he wasn't saying that just to curry favour with Celtic fans. He meant it. It wasn't about the medals for Big Samaras. And you're right. Kieran Tierney must be looking, and I'm not saying he'll be regretting his move, but how happy is he with his football right now? I doubt he'll be overjoyed. Stoned Outlaw 1888, Hoop Doggy Dog. Yes, absolutely. We need to make it our new mascot. I can just imagine the merchandise in the Celtic shop as well. I'm sure Snoop would be up for it. Danny McGrain, hello from Stranraer. Anyone who was looking forward to our evening with Danny on Saturday night, the refunds are going out to anyone who's asked for them because Danny can't make it, unfortunately, kind of last minute. But his teammate Peter Grant has been drafted in, and the vast majority of you will be enjoying that night at Gracie's. But it will mean that there's a few tickets available for Granty, and we'll make all that available over the next couple of days if you want to join.
I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, Peter Grant. I think he's a breath of fresh air on Celtic TV, Paddy. He really 100%. Has.
And as a pundit as well, he's really, really good as a pundit. He's straight to the point, and I really like Peter Grant. He's my favourite. I told you the other night. He's one of my favourite players when I was growing up. Him and Paul McStay.
I loved Granty. Him and Morris and all that with the tinted and Macca with the tinted hair. They all loved that. The Brockside. Fantastic. Another point from Danielle. Little worried about Maida. We're going to be talking about international duty. Danielle, he's admitted he's carrying an injury, but he's away on international duty. Hope he's okay. Team doesn't take the same without him. Right. I'm going to come to yourself first, Paddy Sinnott, in relation to the international break. I asked Lawrence yesterday what his thoughts were. I think he was similar to John Hughes. He thinks it's like the 10 o'clock news coming on in the middle of Die Hard or something like that, and it's just ruining your experience. I totally get it. And you just don't want anybody to get injured. That's the main one. But there's a couple of players there that I'm looking forward to seeing. And the first one is Tony Ralston, of course, coming back into the Scotland squad. I hope he gets game time. But also Mikey Johnston. For Ireland. I'll be interested to see how he performs. What's your take on international breaks, Paddy? And is there anything that you're going to enjoy during the break, international football-wise?
I mean, I suppose for me and the job that I do, just writing solo about Celtic, it's brutal, absolutely brutal, because you're having to focus on... My job basically is to bring all Celtic news, not Scotland news, not anything else. So you need to look at it a different way. So it makes it a lot harder. As a fan, I can take it or leave it. I'll have the Scotland game on in the background if it's there. I don't make any point of trying to watch it. It just doesn't float my boat. And that's not to say I don't want to see us do well. I don't want to see us win or qualify for major tournaments. I've just not had that kind of feeling for the national team for a long, long time. I kind of lost it when we were decent, when we used to beat teams like France and Spain. I mean, we're talking late 80s here, when we were decent side. But nah, I mean, it's not floated my boat for a long time. I can take it or leave it.
It's interesting that because international was at one point like the pinnacle of a footballer's career, John. Yeah. And Champions League and all the big five leagues and all that seems to have overtaken it in many respects. Would you agree with that? I mean, is it something that you've been interested in the past, like Paddy, and you've kind of lost interest?
No, not really. And again, I think we had that discussion before. For me, it was the charity weekender, Paul. We had that discussion. Your favourite team is Celtic and Celtic reserves.
Yep.
So
and then Celtic women. Now we've got 3 teams we can support. Absolutely.
But after that, I actually thought, I should probably have said, like Crystal Palace and Sunderland. Dad went down there, and obviously my Uncle Billy played for Sunderland for a long time. So I should probably have said that, but that's not really being honest. But I don't really care what happens to them. But yeah, no, the international break's a difficult one. The only real conversation I've had about it was with a friend of mine yesterday. Obviously, I live in Ireland, so lots of Ireland supporters here, and Mikey Johnson getting drafted in, I thought was really interesting because let's see what he can do. It's easy to write off Mikey Johnson. It is easy to write off Mikey Johnson's, but much like Ralston, successive managers have thought there was enough there not to punt him out the door. So I'm not just going to write him off. I want to see what he can do at this level. It'd be very, very interesting. Ireland are really quite poor. And they could do with any sort of quality in their team. So I'd be fascinated to see what happens there. As for the rest of it, the only thing in the international break that's really caught my attention was the Japanese manager and the effects that might have on us. I'm sure you've discussed this already, but I'd be concerned that his comments and his selection policy could lead the likes of Hatate to say, well, I mean, I can't do anything more. If it comes down to the league that I'm in, I can't do anything more. I can't play any better. What am I going to do? The same for, I suppose, Kyogo to a certain extent as well. It doesn't work for us either, really, because it diminishes the reputation of the league and it also diminishes the value, because an international player, an established international player, is worth an awful lot more than a guy who isn't. So that was concerning. And I know there's a couple of Japanese guys on Twitter, and we have Liam as well, who said, he's trying out different people. He's doing this, he's doing that. He doesn't play with strikers. That's why Kyogo's not in. He doesn't like the league, but then he picks Maeda anyway, or whatever it is. It's just, it seems a bit weird. And, he seems to be quite a sort of stubborn guy set in his ways, and that's fine. But we don't want that sort of message seeping through. Now, it's all right for us to sit and pillory the league every week, because it's like a bit like having an ugly sister, isn't it? It's only you that's allowed to say that. You're not. We don't want other people talking about it. So from that point of view, that was a worry. I don't think that's a good thing at all. We want the likes of Hatate and Kyogo to be able to fulfil their ambitions, international ambitions, while they're at this club, and we don't want any nonsense around that. So I mean, Hatate is, you're looking at the way he's playing and you're thinking, I know some of those boys, they are in better leagues, but they're not in. They're in pretty poor clubs in those leagues. So look. You can't read the man's mind, but that was what would concern me about this international break. Quite frankly, when it comes to I have no idea. I don't even know who Scotland are playing. So that about sums up my interest. And it's not that I dislike it or anything like that. It's just I don't have no interest. So very much, as I said, use it 10 for me.
Aye. Now, with regards to that, then a slightly younger generation in Patrick, what's your take on it? Because that was quite concerning. Looking at the one of the reasons around the omission of Kyogo and Hatate, but obviously there was a bit of a contradiction there, because obviously Maeda's in there. I pointed out that, does that mean Stevie Clarke doesn't rate the Scottish League because there was only 4 players in his squad that played their football in the Scottish League prior to, maybe Tony Ralston coming in. But I'll be interested to see Tony playing. Like John said, I like the fact that Mikey Johnson's been called up, because he's obviously been given a new lease of life with Victoria Guimaraes, who, by the way, there is a fee attached to his loan deal. However, they've already made it clear that they can't afford to pay it. So it would appear that he's coming back to Celtic. He could be coming back as an international player. Stevie Kenny likes playing with his wingers. He always played with wingers in his club days as well. So you hope that he gets a run out. But what's your take on it yourself, Patrick? The international break, is it something that interests you, or you like Danielle falling asleep already?
Can I just interrupt there, Patrick, just to say how impressive was that pronunciation of the Portuguese team, Paul John?
I'm not sure if that's the right team, but
you just make it up.
Possibly. Somebody will correct me in the comments, I'm sure.
I'd drift in and out, if I'm being totally honest. I was when Steve Clarke took over, I was fairly excited, because I thought, right, we've got a proper manager, and you take a look at the squad and you think, right, we probably should be doing something here, and we end up qualifying. Don't have the best of Euros. We're pretty poor after the Euros. We've picked up recently. I'm talking about Scotland here. I'm saying we, because obviously I still want Scotland to do well. I'm just to be following Celtic every weekend, and then to go to watch Scotland get humped by Spain, it's not something that appeals to me necessarily. It's not something like, oh, I'm really excited to go and do that. I'm thinking, well, I might be watching it telly, aye, but so you could probably class me as a fair weather fan. You know, if I miss out on a Scotland ticket, like Scotland England in September, 150th anniversary match, I missed out on a ticket. Not that fussed. I'll still watch the game. Still want Scotland to win, obviously, but a bit of a fair weather fan. When it comes to Mikey Johnson, I think he started quite well with Guimaraes. I've not heard a lot recently. I was just searching it there. He's only got one goal. I don't know how up to date that website was though. But it'll be good for him to, because obviously the thing he's been missing since probably 2019 has been game time. So
Yeah.
to be playing for Guimaraes all season, to be playing for Ireland hopefully as well. Hopefully he comes back with a bit more physicality. I didn't know that they've sort of said that they can't afford them. I was half expecting him to come back, but it's interesting to see that he'll be coming back. He's another one. I think in many ways he's kind of the opposite to Abada. He seems to have bags of talent and skill and all that, but next to no end product. Whereas Abada, as John was saying, he's not got many tricks up his sleeve. He's just quite pacey, but he does get the goals and he gets the assists. But again, it's hard to see how he gets in the team because if guys like Abada have been kept out, then it's going to be quite difficult for Johnston to get in. And we don't have the injury crisis anymore that we had when he played in the League Cup final last December. So it'll be good for him to get game time, hopefully kickstart his career again. But I'm not sure how he gets into the Celtic team, if I'm being honest.
No, I'd probably agree with that. I want to get on to your second poll, John, before we take in the last 10 minutes of the show. You ran 2 polls this week. What was the second one?
So, the second one, don't be cheating in the comments. I saw someone there cheating that took part in them. Don't be cheating in the comments now. Don't tell anyone what it is, what the result is. If you're an opposition manager and you have the choice of one Celtic player, who would you take? Kyogo, Kalmak, CCV, or Hatate? There was 2,156 votes, and to say that this was close would be an understatement. So it's Kyogo, Kalmak, CCV, or Hatate. Who would you take? Now, I appreciate it depends on what you're looking for as a manager at any given time. But all that aside, let's assume, sort of standard team, no great weaknesses anywhere or whatever it is. Who would you take?
It's a really good one because you're looking at it completely differently from the previous question. I'm going to ask you first, Paddy, what's your take on this one? Who would you take if you're an opposing manager and you are offered one of those 4 players?
I'm going to be boring and I'm going to say Hatate again, just for the same reasons that I gave for the most naturally gifted. He's an all-rounder. He's a great player. He's only 25 as well, so you've got a good few years out of him. Again, I suppose it depends what you're looking for. If you're an attacking side, would you take Kyogo? Of course you would, for his finishing. If you need somebody to help keep you up, you would obviously take CCV to shore up the defence. But as an all-rounder, I've got to say Hatate. That's just a complete boring answer, but the guy's just phenomenal, and he can play, like I said earlier on, he can play left back, centre mid, attacking mid, he can play up front, he can make the ball disappear at will. It's got to be Hatate for me.
Hatate for Paddy. What about yourself, Patrick? If you're the opposing manager, you get offered these 4 guys. I think I know, although I've not looked at the final result, John, I think I know who the top 2 will be because it's the 2 that I'm thinking of. But what are you saying to it, Patrick?
I'll just reiterate John's caveat that it really does depend on what your team's lacking. Because I think if you're a team battling relegation, you've got to go Carter Vickers. If you're a team that struggles to score goals, but you're creating a decent amount of chances, you're going for Kyogo. And then if you're a team like, our rivals and you have really poor midfield options, you could go for either of McGregor and Hatate. I'm going to be a bit different. I'll go for Carter Vickers. I've never known a Celtic centre-back to be as good, as consistent, as reliable. I mean, even Virgil van Dijk, the player he's became is obviously better than Carter Vickers, I would say. But the player he was at Celtic, I feel as if he could switch off at times. he could make really daft mistakes at times, totally out of character. But Carter Vickers is just the most solid, one of the most consistent. In terms of consistency, him and McGregor, they're given 7, 8, 9 out of 10 every single week. So to add a bit of to be different from Hatate, because I think everyone would say Hatate, but I'll be a bit different and say Carter Vickers because the guy's absolutely solid.
Oh, he's unbelievable. And by the way, I think there's a good point there about Van Dijk. There came a point in Van Dijk's Celtic career where I felt that he was coasting it a wee bit. I'm not saying he became complacent. I think it's the same in all walks of life. It's like driving. You get so good at it that you stop paying attention. And that's why I've hit a roundabout a couple of times. So CCV is massive, if you ask me, but so's McGregor. And I feel that that's maybe the two frontrunners on this one. I think what McGregor's brought to his game, particularly under Ange, is that we've seen him grabbing a game by the scruff of the neck, sometimes when we're not winning it, and pulling us right back into it. Like, I'm just not going to lose this game. And we've seen that from Callum McGregor, some great character. But Carter Vickers, for me, there's so many reasons, secondary reasons why I would choose him. I think he's one of the main reasons why our inverted fullbacks are able to flourish, because he just keeps everything solid at the back. I think Starfelt, he's got all the defensive qualities, but Carter Vickers beside him has made him even more solid. And even Joe Hart, I think there's a few deficiencies in his game that we don't really focus on a lot of the time because Carter Vickers is there. So I'm going to go for CCV, John. Who won that particular poll?
It's interesting. I just want to point out again, Kyogo came last again with 8%, and the fact I had a couple of guys on Twitter losing their minds about the fact that Kyogo could come last in any poll of current Celtic players, especially given Ange's comments when he said, Kyogo was my banker. But Kyogo is a banker in Ange's system, and also a couple of those guys weren't available for, to be transferred at the same time there, and he already had Kalmak. So, from that point of view, I understand. I also understand because my inclination, I think we've all sort of football managers in our heads a wee bit, and you always build from the back. You always have a solid spine. It's far more important for most teams that you have a decent centre-half and a decent centre midfielder than it is that you have a decent striker. You have to be hard to beat first. That's most people. Not in Ange's world, obviously, but for most people, we've been brought up with that hard to beat. However, so when Kyogo 8%, CCV 28%, Hatate and Callum McGregor deadlocked 32%.
Wow.
And that was over 2,100 votes. That's a pretty good sample. And Callum McGregor and Hatate deadlocked.
That is interesting. I was convinced it would be CCV and Kalmak up top there, but these polls are very interesting, John. Keep them coming, by the way, because it's a nice, especially during the international breaks, a nice wee breakaway from the chat. I want to bring up some of these comments that are coming through. Thanks, everybody. 600 strong for tuning into the bulletin. David Boyle. Ange knows that football is a cycle of constant change. Therefore, the empty vessels won't faze him one little bit. You're spot on. I totally get that, and all the racket that we hear in the media. I think very early on we realised Ange has already sussed that out, and it won't affect his preparation or his charge towards the treble. Richard Herries, can't wait for Screamer Celica. Neither can I. It's been a while since I've done it, and obviously it was the brainchild of myself, and I say brainchild, using myself, Kevin, and brain in the same sentence seems wrong. It was the idea of us two some time ago. We used to do it way back in the day, and we're going to do it again tonight because you might love or loathe Oasis, but they were a big part of my childhood, so we're going to cover a couple of the albums. And as we do on Screamer Celica, we'll look at what Celtic were doing at that time. So we're going to start with What's the Story Morning Glory tonight. What were Celtic doing at that point in 1995 when Oasis were ruling the world? We'll find out tonight. Kevin, afternoon Acsom from windy Airdrie. 9 points clear, cup in the bag, another on the way. Happy days. Absolutely, Kevin. And by the way, there's enough in the media to try and cause stir. So you're right. Let's look at the positive of being a Celtic fan. There was a woman on yesterday saying a big shout out to her son, who watches Acsom at night with his papa, with his granddad every night, and he loves
That's
it.
class.
And we gave him, it was just amazing. Give him a wee shout out. Tony Craig, it's a shame people don't care about the national team. We don't support just because we are successful. There's a bit of that. I think, Tony, like personally, I used to be all about watching Scotland, and it wasn't, being a glory hunter. I just don't think the quality was there. And I think the game changed to the point where club football overtook international football. And it's all about, again, if you're a Scotland fan or you're a football fan in Scotland, you're just kind of hoping you can believe in an entertaining team. I think we've got loads of great players. Are we an entertaining team? I'm not too sure at the moment. Although, like Patrick said earlier, a lot of time for Stevie Clark. And I know that there was a chance at one point that he might even become a Celtic manager over the last 15 years. He was that way inclined, but it wasn't to be. He's a big hero down at Chelsea, though. Stephen Healy, what about the banner from the Green Brigade? Well, it is something that the Green Brigade get a lot of criticism at times for pyrotechnics and UEFA fines and all this kind of stuff. Not from us, it's got to be said. And I think it's only right to give them credit where there's credit due. Paddy, I don't know if you wrote about it on your site, but that banner, I said on Monday, the clear distinction between stop the Tories and F the Tories was very important.
Aye, and it's amazing how the change of one word can change the point of view of so many people into it.
Yeah.
When both of them pretty much effectively mean the same thing. The Green Brigade do get a bit of, I think they got a lot of unfair criticism for their banners, considering the amount of work they do, raising money for charities and doing work for food banks and that kind of stuff. And some of the stuff they got up to probably needs to be knocked in the head a wee bit, but the amount of good they do far outweighs that kind of stuff. And the message in the banner is completely right, fits in with the values of the club. That political party again is destroyed. I don't want to get too political because I'm aware it's I'm a big yes man. I want independence for my country, blah blah blah. But I just think I agree with the banner, Paul. John, that's what I'm going to say. It's a Celtic podcast. It's not a political podcast. I just agree with what they said. That's all I'm going to say on that.
I'd say, Paul John, I said exactly the same thing. I tweeted it exactly the same thing. Now, I appreciate stop the Tories was actually a reference to stop the boats, basically. So that's the reason they used that particular word. But regardless, what it meant was we didn't get the usual bad actors, bad faith actors with their faux moralising, and fake outrage because somebody used a sweary word. Given the detracting then from the actual message itself, which is the most important thing. So regardless of why they did it, the outcome, I think, was the premium outcome. Basically, it was as good as it could have gotten. The message was undiluted. Everybody could see it. Everyone was talking about it. There wasn't any way you could, slag them for it, give them any grief for it. So I think it was an excellent outcome, and you can't disagree with the message because, you're sitting watching Suella Cowerdeman, whatever her name is, in Rwanda, of all places, sitting cackling with a concentration camp behind her. So I think that, if anything, if there had been swear words involved, it certainly wouldn't have bothered me because I think it would have still been too mild for what that's actually about. But it's no fair play to them because people couldn't then denigrate the message, and the message was a very important one.
John, I find it incredible that there was more outrage about that sweary word than there was about the actual policies the Tories have inflicted on the country and the suffering it's caused. I found that incredible. But what people choose to focus on was that one word. For me, it's just baffling, man.
That's just deflection, mate. That's deflecting from what's it? It's deliberate and it's deflection.
Yeah.
And by some very well practiced political campaigners and some, as I say, people with bad faith actors and people with some very, very shocking views on immigration. So, look, again, I'm sure the comments are lighting up with let's get talking about Celtic. But again, it was an important message and it is at the football. And I think it should be at the football because there is a political element to this club. There has been since its inception. I think with the charitable foundations of the club and the immigrant foundations of the club, if any message is to be out there, that's the one.
Yeah, and the thing is, Paddy, I totally get, this isn't a political state of mind, it's a Celtic state of mind, but they go hand in hand. And we used to have a show, what was it called, actually? You were on it, Patrick, you and Declan.
It was a state of politics, I believe.
The state of politics. That's what it was. You had some fantastic guests on it as well. So I know that you are finely tuned, and I think most people are becoming more politicised. I always say that I was politicised due to my own circumstances with my old fella being a striking minor back in the day. I think there's a generation of kids coming through who will be politicised due to the environment in which we are currently living in. But I know yourself and Declan, you got your finger on the pulse, and with regards to these types of banners, are we sweary here or there? Everybody swears. The reason we don't do it on the show is because people like the wee guy yesterday that got the shout out. We don't want to be polluting his ears with F words and all that kind of stuff when he watches with his granddad. So Patrick, what was your take on that banner?
Yeah, fully supported it. I mean, I think I support 95% of what the Green Brigade does. They've obviously got the odd incident or the odd idiot that causes bother, but no, every banner, as you say, it's delivering the same message, whether it's the F word or the Douglas Ross banner from a few months ago or the one at the weekend. It's the message is the same. The outrage should be about what the party is doing to working class people, to people, asylum seekers coming to this country. I mean, for God's sake, the club that we all support, the club we're talking about just now, it wouldn't have been formed if we had these same policies 180 years ago, 160 years ago, which of course there was a lot of anti-Irish sentiment and still is to this day, but obviously it was massive back then, and every Celtic fan would be opposed to that, obviously, because it directly links to them. But you have to have solidarity between, whether you're Irish or whatever country you're coming from. These are guys fleeing wars that we've had a hand in starting, for crying out loud. I mean, you can't not offer support to them. So I think anyone who is outraged by a swear word on a piece of paper should really take a look at the policies that the government have been enacting for the last 13 years and decide which one's more important.
We're still demonised, for those things as well. Some of the names that we are still called come directly from that. Mm-hmm. Tarriers. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's about, they didn't want to, they're worried about giving you a job because then you would tarry afterwards. You would stay, right? And that's where that comes from. So it doesn't just go away, no. And to be feeding into that narrative now, 160 odd years later, to still be feeding into that narrative, to be demonising people as other, as lesser, mm-hmm. as Untermensch, we've seen that before. We've seen how that plays out. So, I'm glad they didn't swear on it because it allows us to talk about it without the usual, as I say, people getting outraged about swear words. But, it was very effective for the message, and it's a very important message. And I do apologise. I don't look at the comments. I'm sure people are going buck mad. But anyway, if you don't agree, I apologise. But that's just the way it is as we see it, I suppose.
John, a wee bit of politics, a wee bit of music, a wee bit of politics. It's a Celtic state of mind. There's nothing wrong with that. Roll with it. Absolutely, yes. Synonymous with some famous victories for Celtic. The 6-2 game in particular. Feed the Bear will be happy. You were a regular on the Scream of Celica comments. Join us at 7 o'clock. And actually, I agree with you, Angelo Tyro. I'm a Stone Roses guy, actually, as well. Oasis come maybe second or third in my own list, but there you go. We'll be talking about Oasis tonight. Listen, I've really enjoyed sitting in for Kevin Graham today. It's not that often I get to join you guys on the screen, and it's brilliant. It's a great dynamic. Kevin will be back, but just with work commitments, etc., he can't do it for the next few weeks, and I'll be coming in to bore you senseless about politics and music. But tonight, Scream of Celica's back at 7. Thanks everybody for getting involved. Well over 600 live, which is just astonishingly good. Thanks everybody for supporting us. All we ask you to do, give us a wee thumbs up on the YouTube video and subscribe. We're giving away this jersey later on in the week for one lucky subscriber. Thank you to Patrick McGill, Paddy Sinnott and John Hughes for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Hail, hail.